Hey all, here OS Reviews. A trend that's been getting popular on social media recently has been the concept of inkless pens or eternal pens, which can also be found in the pencil form known as eternal pencils or pencils that never need to be sharpened. Although not really a conventional piece of tech, I thought it was still cool enough as a gadget to take a closer look at and see if the hype is real or does it work maybe not as well as the claims would suggest. Some of the original models actually sold for hundreds of dollars, being advertised as this premium deluxe writing experience, but as the concept became more popular, there have been quote-unquote clones or versions from China that you can often find for just a couple of bucks. In fact, we have two of the cheaper ones in front of us being billed as, again, inkless pencil or inkless pen, reusable everlasting pencil or everlasting pen. The wood version that we have here is a pack of 3, ebony black as well as a sandalwood and a rosewood, which all are made out of genuine wood, so they actually feel quite premium, at least in this particular variant. Again, pretty low cost for under 10 bucks, and claims to also be as erasable as a regular pencil as well. What's kind of weird about these eternal pencils and pens though is there's actually two distinct versions of this product floating around. The most popular one that we see here is commonly sold on Amazon. They have kind of a black tip to them. In fact, some of those nibs they also claim are replaceable. So on a technical level, it's not truly eternal or everlasting, but they claim that it's going to be still easier than a regular pencil in terms of you don't have to shave things out. And then one of these included tips can last upwards of 159 pencils in terms of the amount of graphite. And that's different from the second type of product, which is closer to that original eternal pen that we saw. You can tell them apart because in the pictures, these tips will often be silver, and instead of being made out of graphite or lead, it's actually a alloy metal material that is physically rubbing on the surface of the paper, and some of the particles are rubbing off and creating a mark. So I suspect these versions are actually a little bit more longer lasting, but they're also sometimes a little bit harder to find and will sell for often a few bucks more. We have a stopper here as well, so it will prevent the pencil or pen from rolling around on a flat surface, which is pretty cool. All of these versions though don't come with a built-in eraser, but can be supposedly erased with any regular one. It's actually not the first time that this concept of an eternal pen or pencil has been around. Back in the early 2000s, there was another company called Pentec that came out with their never needs to be sharpened pen. And what's interesting here is they're using quote-unquote liquid graphite. It's basically a pen that is in the shape of a pencil made out of wood, but there's an ink cartridge inside, which is liquid graphite. But it also means that once the liquid inside runs out, well, you're kind of out of luck. You can't really replace this easily. It's cool that you don't have to worry about any shavings, but it's really a one-time use product and you have to dispose of it. So these newer generations of this concept are supposedly longer lasting. They don't actually use ink, and in the case of even the graphite versions can be more easily swapped out. Although with that graphite version, I would say the concept is cool, but it's really not that different from something like a mechanical pencil, where you're able to, again, use a lead and then pop in more leads over time. You don't have to really sharpen that either. And then for testing purposes, we have a couple of different pieces of paper that we'll write on, including, for example, if you're drawing, we have a drawing paper, we have a regular piece of notebook paper that's white, as well as a colored paper that will simulate, if a darker background of paper is used, what the effect is like. Hello world. And I'll say the same thing here on the white piece of paper as well. So some first impressions is it's kind of impressive that it is making a mark. That rubbing and the friction is allowing the alloy particles to physically kind of get marked down on this piece of paper. However, in terms of the whole pen claim, I would say this is still much closer to a pencil in terms of the writing experience as well as the level of color that you have on the piece of paper. It's not bad, it's definitely visible, but you have to still press a little bit harder, and because it is using friction to write down, it's not quite as smooth or gliding along as a regular ballpoint pen, which is maybe ink or gel based. So it's not quite as smooth. So for things like signing documents, I wouldn't say it's necessarily quite as pleasurable, but for using it like a regular pencil, it definitely works as you would expect. Now, if we try and erase the print here, you can see the letters can be erased with a little bit of work. Because you have to press down a little bit harder to write anyways, though, you may have a bit more of a deeper imprint on your paper compared to regular pencil being erased, but still works. And it's good that even on this colored paper, I'm not seeing a huge difference. Now, if we try a piece of drawing paper, which has a little bit more of a coarse texture to it, and we try and maybe do a little bit of shading here on the side, if we are pressing down harder, just like a regular piece of pencil, it will leave a darker mark, and then versus lighter marks, of course, leave a more faint mark behind. So you can do a little bit of shading here, but it's definitely not quite as easy to do as a regular pencil when it comes to the level of control, since the graphite and lead doesn't flow as freely. It's kind of imprinting it by the friction of the metal there. So next in the comparison, I will use the graphite tip version that's slightly less expensive, doesn't require you to really press hard at all, and the feeling is very close to, in fact, a regular pencil, so it requires less force than that pen version requires. But also, like a pencil, it can be more prone to breaking. If you press too hard, the lead can break off, as well as if you kind of press your finger on it, you can leave marks on your skin, versus the pen version doesn't really rub or wear down, but this is going to be much more of a direct equivalent to regular pencils when it comes to drawing as well. You can get more control when it comes to shading. Now, I will also do a quick comparison of this with a regular pencil. This is just an H2 pencil, and we'll also see how that looks next to it. Hello world. And I would say that overall, it's not really giving us a huge difference in terms of these two, although the first one here is noticeably lighter, as you can see there. The second one is a pretty good close alternative to a regular pencil. I would still say a physical regular pencil can still maybe get a touch darker even, and you are getting a little bit more control in terms of the way it feels. And then this is a mechanical pencil, which has a very fine point that is not going to be quite as suitable for things like drawing, but for writing, it's actually not bad at all because it's still easy to make out. And then last but not least, here's a ballpoint pen to serve as a final comparison here. So a pen, especially a gel-based pen, will flow a lot more easily. It's also the darkest of the bunch by applying the least amount of force, although it can't be really used for as easy shading or drawing art, since everything will seem the same in terms of darkness, regardless of how hard you're pressing. Alright, so that is more or less it as far as this quick video, and in terms of conclusions, this being a true pen replacement, I would say, not really. It's more of a pencil alternative, even for the one that has an alloy metal tip. The friction, as well as the force that you have to press down, the hardness of the lines that you see, and the erasability that is. As a pencil alternative, I would say the graphite version just writes better. It's easier for shading, you don't have to press as hard, and it gets a darker line as well. Although the metal version will of course last longer since it will be resistant to also the weather and elements, it's more durable as well. But for simple writing, they should all suffice, and it's actually a pretty clever idea that can be an interesting stocking stuffer or kind of a low-cost gift, and generally being kind of an interesting conversation starter. So you can check out additional details if interested in the links down below. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.